I'm Jago Cooper. I'm head of the Americas at the British Museum.
And I'm Amber Lincoln, a curator in the Americas section at the British Museum.
Welcome to the City exhibition, Arctic Culture and Climate. In the Arctic, climate change isn't a distant threat in the future. It's the lived experience right now. There are places that are melting for the first time in human history. And this exhibition is about the lives and experiences of the people who live there.
At the heart of this exhibition is decades of collaboration with Indigenous Arctic people. Jago, Peter Louvers, and myself have worked with hunters, herders, scholars, political advisors, seamstresses, storytellers on this exhibition, and we're particularly grateful that they've been so generous in sharing their knowledge.
To really understand the Arctic, you need to do what I'm doing now. Stand on top of the North Pole and look down at the world. When you see the circumpolar North from this perspective, you start to understand some of the connections between the different places. From the Nenets of Siberia to the Inupiat of Alaska, from the Sami of Northern Europe to the Inuit of North America. These cultures are incredibly diverse and have their very own histories, but there's one thing which bonds them together. What I'm standing on is the sea ice, and that's melting at an astonishing rate.
Ice is also access to bountiful worlds. Andrew Kopic's There's Another One beautifully captures the rich life underneath the sea ice and its significance for people who rely on that life. And this is as important today as it was in the past.
When we think about the problems and solutions of climate change, it really needs a sort of fundamental rethink about how we live with the planet. If you conceive of the planet as a sort of finite set of resources that those with the power and technology can exploit for their own gain, then that's a difficult place to start. The Arctic is the complete opposite of that. People are an integrated part of the ecosystem. They're part of a living world and just one small, humble part of it. This translates to the aesthetics of art itself. Throughout this museum, you see these big marble monuments, iconoclastic objects of power. But the value of what art means in the far north is completely different. So this fish skin bag, translucent, ethereal, created in the 19th century, captures this understanding that when you take an object, the value and beauty of its creation is in how you respect the environment from which it came. So if your starting point is thinking about the environment in a completely different way, then it changes everything about your relationships with it. Take hunting, for example. You might think that hunting and the success of hunt is based on the technology you have or the skills as a hunter. But in the Arctic, that's not the case. It's the choice of the animal, who they wish to give themselves up to. And they do that based on the personality of the hunter, their soul, and the aesthetics of their tools. Take this world's first wetsuit behind me, which was used to go out hunting whale. This is an object that had to be perfectly created in order to justify the killing of the whale. And these practices, these ideas continue throughout the Arctic today. So if you take Brian Adams's photograph of Marie Rexford from northern Alaska, Brian is an Inupiat photographer, and he's capturing the continuation of these practices with the whale blubber lying down ready to be socially shared after the success of the hunt.
For Arctic Indigenous people, the weather isn't something to be resisted or overpowered. It's something to be used. It's a tool to be harnessed. So for instance, seamstresses who make the wonderful clothing and footwear that make life in the Arctic possible have a knowledge of weather. They use particular forms of, they use particular temperatures, humidity, and seasonality in order to tan and the hides used to make clothing, such as the gut skin parka that are so essential to hunters and others for traveling and staying dry. They tan the gut skin in a deep freeze, the coldest part of winter, to get this very opaque white with flexibility. This is weather knowledge that people use. In frozen climates, icy seas, being able to predict the weather is essential knowledge for hunters and reindeer herders. In conversations we had with hunters in Shishmaref, Alaska, for instance, Delano Barr explained to us how he learned from his grandparents and father to predict the weather. And they used the stars, they used the color of the sky, they observed animals to see how they were behaving. And this was essential before hunting through kayak, for instance. You needed to know the swell of the waves. Was the ice coming in? Unfortunately, with global climate change, these generations of knowledge, of patterns of weather knowledge, is made obsolete as global climate change is making weather patterns alter so significantly. And hunters like Delano Barr have stressed that we all have to adjust ourselves to the weather. We have to make changes.
When everything started changing due to global warming, oh boy, that messed up everything. The way of thinking and the way we live, because our ocean would be completely frozen by October. I mean, with this climate change now, it's still summertime in October here, up here. And we're near the Arctic Circle. We're just a few miles south of the Arctic Circle in Shishmaref here.
Many people don't realize that the Arctic has been populated for more than 30,000 years. People were living in the far north long before Britain was repopulated after the last ice age. And these people in the far north have lived through big changes before. And what we see from their technologies, from the things they leave behind, is their amazing ability to adapt and develop new technologies. One of the reasons we know so much about Arctic prehistory now is that these objects are now melting out of the permafrost due to climate change. Here we see some objects from some walrus hunters living in northern Siberia around 1,500 years ago. The beautiful intricacy of the walrus bone and ivory shows how these people were creating objects using materials traded in from the south. You can see small pieces of iron are hafted in the adze heads. This essence of the Arctic, this ability to adapt to large amounts of change, to innovate with new technologies, these are essential skills that people in the Arctic would need today.
Like their ancestors before them, Indigenous Arctic people have used these same resilient strategies, adaptation, innovation, and collaboration, to manage the rapid social, economic, and political changes of the last 300 years. These have been the result of European exploration and the Russian annexation of Siberia, and the colonial stories and histories that came after that. Some of the earliest encounters between Inuit and European explorers, for instance, were violent, such as Martin Frobisher's encounter with Inuit of Iqaluit in 1577. But others have shown an incredible amount of collaboration as these well-adapted local people shared their knowledge, for instance, with Ross's crew in the 1830s. There's a depiction by Ross himself of two Inuit men looking at a chart and explaining where the Europeans were at the moment and giving them local knowledge. And in turn, the Europeans who were often ill-equipped for these harsh climates were incredibly impressed with the innovative technology and the use of resources that many of the people they encountered had displayed, such as this early Inuit sled from northern Greenland, which is made and remade from many different materials, driftwood, antler. And what's amazing about this sled is that you can see the reuse of the material. So everything was so efficiently saved and kept that a crossbar would have been reused for a bow drill, for instance, and then reused into something else. And you can see the evidence of that when you look closely at this wonderful sled behind me.
This is an Inukshuk, An inukshuk is a place marker in the landscape, and you can find them throughout the far north, created by the Inuit. This particular one is one built by Peter Urnik, who's from Naujat in Repulse Bay. After many years of discussion, Peter came over to London and went down to a quarry in Kent, and then took out some Kentish ragstone and built this inukshuk right here in the British Museum. In a way, they act as markers or places in landscape that can connect up the geographies of London and the far north together. And when you hear Peter Urnik talk, for him, they act as symbols of resilience, symbols of knowledge that are passed down through generations and that remain to today.
Inukshuk is a really good way to learn about Inuit culture, Inuit customs and Inuit traditions. Because as I said, Inukshuk is a symbol of survival for Inuit since many, many thousands of years ago.
Since Arctic Indigenous people are on the front lines of global climate change, they're also leading the way in raising awareness and finding solutions to the problems affecting their communities. We've asked 2 Indigenous Arctic organizations to curate this section: the Shishmaref Erosion and Site Expansion Coalition and the Inuit Circumpolar Council Alaska have brought 2 major issues that they're dealing with to the visitors here in London. Shishmaref, a low barrier island, is rapidly eroding as a result of fierce storms. They are working to prevent being some of the first climate migrants. The Inuit Circumpolar Council of Alaska is working for food securities. Some of the problems that come from climate change also include the melting of the permafrost, invasive species, increase in contaminants. This is affecting people's food systems, and of course, being able to continue to hunt and gather and fish is really important to people. So what's amazing about these organizations is that they're relying on some of these same strategies: adaptation, innovation, collaboration, that their ancestors have used for a millennium. Atigit Silapat, the beautiful printed parkas above us, were created by young kids in Kinate and Pangerton, Nunavut, who are inheriting a warm Arctic. They've been working with a group of artists out of Toronto, the Embassy of the Imagination, to reflect on climate change and the experiences of changing environments around them. They are calling for reciprocal global action and solidarity during this time of transformation.
Most exhibitions at the British Museum are about the past, but this is an exhibition which is really about the future. We really hope that you'll come along and listen to the stories being told by communities in the Arctic, and look at the incredible objects that have these narratives of living in a time of dramatic global change.